Hey, Nicholas, thank you so much for joining the Selling Well podcast. It's great to meet you.
Thanks for having me.
Well, Nicholas, we're going to get into, Chili Piper's in a very interesting space in the tech stack for salespeople. But one of the ways I like starting off is always asking, tell us a little bit about your journey in professional sales. I know you bootstrapped the company and you'd been leading the sales organization, but tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, I don't want to make it too long, but it's been a constant oscillation between the engineering part and the sales part. So I actually went to École Polytechnique in Paris undergrad and studied math and computer science. And upon graduation, I immediately switched to marketing and I went to work for
Okay.
Procter and Gamble as an assistant brand manager on a soap. And then I went to work in consulting where I was mostly doing the selling. So I was selling new assignments to very quickly, even though I was in my 20s. So thing. I had actually in college, even in high school, that I had a big passion and luckily gift for sales. I actually funded some of my studies with random sales job, including selling newspapers in the street.
Wow.
I outsold everybody else 11 to 1 in selling these newspapers. So I really love that. And so recently, that is a long story that I came to the US from Europe, and I went to Stanford Business School, and I was exposed to Steve Jobs, and I was inspired to say I want to be a tech entrepreneur. So I moved back to more on the tech and product side. And more recently, my wife Anina and I were looking at what to do next, and we decided to start a company. And I said, this time I want to start a company that sells to salespeople because
Mm.
I love salespeople, I love the sales process, and this is what we're going to do. So we started a company the exact way one shouldn't, which is no clear idea what we're going to do, and this grand vision that we're going to change the world of sales. But fortunately, or maybe not fortunately, probably deliberately, we decided to focus on some clear and narrow problems so that we wouldn't have the risk of building something that nobody wants, which is number one risk in a startup, in any business, actually. Uh, that's what Paul Graham, the Y Combinator, says is, oh, just know you're going to, if you make something that users want, you're in business. So we didn't take a chance. We went to interview a lot of companies and we said, do you have a problem? And so we started with the first quite narrow problem. It was this company called 5 Stars. I said, yes, I have a problem. When my prospecting team on the phone with a willing prospect, it takes them 7 minutes to actually send the meeting invite. And the reason for that is that they have to round robin the opportunity to one of the 30 account executives they have.
Right.
It takes them already a few minutes to check in the spreadsheet who's next, then to go to the Google Calendar, then to create the invite, then to send the invite. And by the time they send the invite, the prospect is obviously no longer on the phone because nobody's going to wait 7 minutes, especially in the small business world, to get a meeting. And so they not sure that they've seen the invite, and they had a very high no-show rate. And so they asked us, can you automate that process? So we started with this very, very narrow but acute use case. And there was a nice thing about it is that it was measurable. They had a no-show rate that they measured. So we knew that if we're going to shrink the time it takes, first we're going to save time for the reps in a very measurable way. And then we're going to improve the attendance rate in a very measurable way. So
Right.
two things happened. We shrunk from 7 minutes to a few clicks, so about 20 seconds. You click, and the meeting invite is sent. The prospect was still on the call when they received the invite. And as a result, the no-show rate went from 35% to 12%. So we
Wow.
divided by 3. That's what happened. We added some other things like reminders and smart reminder and automatic rescheduling. So that's the story of where we're coming from and how we got started at Chili Pepper. And then, of course, we moved on to bigger things.
Well, one of the reasons thank you for that, by the way. And one of the reasons I was so excited to speak to you today, you said two things. You said, hey, we want to make sure we were fixing a real problem that existed. And you said you wanted to support salespeople, with the technology. But the interesting thing I think about Chili Piper is you actually support two groups. You support marketing and sales, and there's an interesting chasm between these two. Most of the people listening to this podcast will have experienced it. sales and marketing. So at some point in time here today, I really want to get into that discussion on getting those two groups on the same page, because large or small company, they seem to be natural enemies in certain ways. But one of the stats I liked from some of the reporting, I can't remember where I found it, but you talked about in your reporting, web leads being 9 times more likely to convert when you can respond in under 5 minutes. Under
That's
five
right.
minutes. You've also done some great research, Nicholas, on what it takes the average company to respond. Share with the team, how long does it take the average company to respond to an inbound lead?
But by segment that, but overall we found something like in the 40 hours plus. Yes.
So, a number of people who are listening to this podcast pulled their car over to the side of the road to swear. And then other people drop their phones. If they're working out, they can't believe it. 42 hours. So I think about that, T, when we start to look at our process. 42 hours, to me, half of me believes it because of some of the experience I've seen out there, but it's just flabbergasting when we think of the expense of getting that lead in the first place. So
The other piece that was amazing from this research is that a large portion of companies actually never followed up. Like you never heard back from them. They submitted, they just didn't do it. It got lost in the cracks or somewhere.
wow,
Yeah,
how scary is that in today's day and age where we're fighting so hard to get that live
that's right.
conversation or that inbound lead? What were some of the other key findings in your view, the most surprising findings from the research? And maybe share a little bit of the background of the research.
Yeah, that research came from very strange things. When we went to market with our product called Form Concierge that I'll explain in a minute, we found a lack of awareness of the problem. It felt like marketing thought, no, they don't have a problem. And sales, no, we don't have a problem. So that's what triggered that research. We said, you think you don't have a problem. Let's take the um, let's get ourselves in the shoes of a prospect and do. It was like a secret shopper, right? Kind of thing. We just come to the site and ask for.
Yeah.
So we were amazed that yes, there are some companies that consider themselves excellent, but even these companies past the 5 minutes average that it takes. And then, as you said, the average was 42 hours. And then I don't remember, but something like 10 or 15% of companies actually never followed up. Or some never followed up. So it was astonishing. That took me back to the very reason why we built this product from Concierge. So I mentioned how we got started in the business helping SDRs book for account executives.
Yes.
And I was talking to one of these SDRs, and I said, "So what's your job?" He said, "I'm an inbound SDR." And I said, "And what does an inbound SDR do?" I said, "Well, you see, when a prospect comes to a website, there's a form, they submit the form, they get a page to say, 'Thank you, someone is going to call you.' Well, that's me who's going to call them." I say, "Oh, that's awesome. And how is it going?" And they say, "It's going great. I'm converting at 40%.
No kidding. Why do they
Yes.
need?
And they say you're converting at 40% means 60 out of 100 people ask for a meeting and didn't get one. But I had the chief revenue officer of a very large company tell me, "I'm not touching my process. I'm converting at 40%.
Mhm.
And it took me a while to understand how these smart people could possibly think that converting at 40% is acceptable. And that's because the outbound people, so the SDRs who are calling people who've never heard from them, convert at 1%. Right. So 40% seems so good.
Right.
You have a guy next to you who send all these mails, gets nobody, and you get all these meetings. But of course, that's the wrong way to think of it. The right way to think of it is that these people had already asked for a meeting. So we built a solution where upon the form submission, our software as a bit of JavaScript does automatically the qualifying. So check that the person is qualified. And then the routing, retrieve the calendar of the right salespeople, and then the booking. So in one click later, the prospect. So when the prospect submits the form, he or she sees a calendar, picks a time, and the meeting is booked one click later. And of course, that went up to 80% conversion rate, which you'd hope, right? That they ask for a meeting, they get the meeting, and over that. So when we launched that, and we had a company called Segment do an A/B test to prove that it works. They
Yes.
went exactly what I said, 40% to 80%. So they bought it immediately. And then I thought, okay, we're golden, right? We have such a huge value to the sales and marketing team. And there it was this big, I'm putting a silence because that's exactly what the market sent us, silent. I went to salespeople and I said, this is amazing. Look, we can get so many more,
Yeah.
much more pipeline. And salespeople didn't move. They didn't move. And they had this perception, oh yes, other people have this problem, but I don't have this problem. Very few people actually measured, and those who measured felt, and along the lines where we said, so people probably started at a 42 hours speed to lead time, and then the best one, for example, Zoom Info is a customer. They shrunk it from 32 hours to a few minutes, and they felt this was such a hard thing to do that no, I'm no longer touching it because I've exposed. Except that if you completely change the game, then you no longer have to 20 minutes because with Chili Pepper, it's instantaneous. But I think that was a perception that they already worked a lot in improving that process, and they, a bit like I've trained my horse so well, I'm not going to buy a car, right? my horse is the best in town. Well, if you try a car, it may be different, but so we a large part of the reason why we did this survey to say, look, you're not aware of it, but this is really what you're really doing and what you're losing.
Well, I love the analogy, by the way. I have the fastest horse on the block, and you're bringing a car to the table, and they can't get it. But it does align with. I think you're in this very interesting kind of niche space, and I I can't remember the source, Nicholas, but one of the things I loved when I did some research on this, probably 5, 6 years ago, was there was this analysis of, on average, for North America, for the US on average, how many times does a salesperson actually reach out to an inbound lead? This may have been early research in like 2018, 2017 by Sales and Marketing Magazine. I might be right there. And the answer, there were two different answers. One was the answer of what the salespeople would tell you. And then the second answer was what was reality because they measured it. And that's what I found. So first of all, both numbers were crazy low. So one was the salesperson, people were saying they tried about 3.1 times on average, if memory serves. But the actual research came in and said on average, it was less than 2 reach outs to an inbound lead before they stopped, less than 2. And what was so interesting to me was that gap in terms of reality. We like to think that even on our failings that we're emotionally intelligent, we know what they are. But it seems like,
You're exactly right. When you don't measure things precisely, it's unbelievable how distorted our views can be, especially for things we're emotionally attached to. Like the salesperson is convinced that they put it in place and they've done the job. And I remember, I'll give you an anecdote. It looks like you have the industry data, and I have a lot of anecdotes from working. I was talking to one of my rep, and I said, let's call your, so he had just joined Chili Pepper. I said, let's call your previous company because surely they have a need for the inbound.
Yeah.
I said, oh, no, my previous company, the inbound, they have these 2 reps. And one was called Mary. I remember Mary, and I can't remember the name. And they're amazing. They're amazing. They book every meeting. Like every time somebody asks a meeting, they book it. Oh, that's great. That's great. Yeah. No, they're really doing great. Actually, they're going to hire another person for the inbound. So, oh, really, the volume is going up? No, it's just for to follow up for those inbound who have never been contacted. It was literally the same sentence. Mary is doing great because they had this emotional view that Mary is booking a lot of meetings, and then somebody found that Mary didn't follow up with a whole bunch of them, and that they had to hire somebody to do that. So it was striking how when especially strong emotion and positive emotions like booking a meeting and negative emotions like a no-show can bias actually perceptions of the data.
Well, I love the bias. By the way, I love the bias. I'm always a fan of communication. And I think there's what you say and how you say it. And I can imagine you listening to that call where they don't really know what they're saying. What they're saying is completely proving your point, but they're so comfortable and confident that they have the right answer to the question while they're explaining exactly why they have the wrong answer. But, when you were sharing that story at the beginning and they were so proud of the 40%, and I kind of jumped out of my chair a little bit and said, no kidding, like at least 40%. I think many folks tend to forget, the research from Gardner on this buyer's journey. And, for about 8 and 9 years now, people have been saying, hey, folks, listen, the buyers are out there doing their own research, their own investigation. You talk about it as, the dark side, but doing their own work. And sometimes by the time they reach they could be on the back end of this process because information's so readily available. So this is where I think this niche for Chili Piper is so strong. They want the meeting right now. Like it's not, I don't want to get qualified again by some other sales development rep who's trying to qualify me for my degree of influence and my budget and asking me old school questions about band. I want a meeting with somebody. I think the challenge sometimes with this, I think it's this sales and marketing thing, because I could see the salespeople, saying, "Hey, we're fine," and sometimes, and we've all been there in the early days of sales development, myself included. We got a little saucy. We'd get a few leads in from sales development that weren't perfect, and suddenly we look back at marketing, going, "Your leads are terrible." Now, if you turn off sales development, I'm getting 0 leads because I'm a mature salesperson and I don't like doing demand generation. I'm going to criticize the free leads coming my way when I get 1 or 2 that poor ones. But the smart salespeople look at that and say, listen, I'll take as many poor ones. Just send anything over. Send anything over. If I'm going to have 5% of my leads are not qualified buyers, I'm fine. I'll take the other 95% and run to the bank. So this is where and I bet you see more of this than I do, because this is where this sales versus marketing sounds like you bridge both. And I'd love to see your experience working with those two groups, or hear about your experience where it's worked well, where those two groups are on the same page and working well together, because more often than not, we see a little bit of friction between the two groups.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a several fundamental changes in the marketplace there that are going to completely realign sales and marketing. You pointed out how the past used to work, which is marketing would send a whole bunch of people, and they felt that if they'd captured an email, they'd done a good job. Here's the lead. And sales would basically, you give me that email address, but the person is absolutely not qualified, and that's not that helpful, and I'm wasting my time. I'm better off just focusing on my own leads. So this was the old day. And it's important to understand the difference in qualification. There are 2 completely different aspects of qualification. One is the qualification based on the profile. So for example, if we sell to people who only have Salesforce as CRM, and we
Yes.
sell, then qualification is that if you're not on Salesforce, then we cannot sell to you. It's just a fact, right?
Right.
We disqualify you because there's nothing we can do. Our software works with Salesforce. It's no longer the case, by the way, in our case, but I'm taking an example. Well, there was another aspect of qualification, which is this idea of I've qualified that they're really interested, and it's a qualification on intent. That piece was most frequently done on behavior. So
Yes.
if a person has come back to the site 5 times, then the team will qualify. And there was this big confusion between the two. And as a result, a lot of tension between sales and marketing, right? Saying, oh, look, I'm sending you this guy who's been on the site 3 times. Say, yeah, it's a student. Yeah, well,
Right.
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 It's coming back. He's doing a research project. We send me only students. And as I said, emotions have a very, very strong power to bias our perception of data. So send me 3 students in a month, and I think you're a moron and you don't know your job, right? Even though
Yes.
you may have sent me 100 qualified enterprise, but these 3 have marked me that
Exactly.
I showed up on a call, and this guy. And the other way, or same way, like send me amazing opportunities that just happened by chance, and I'll think you're unbelievable. So there's misalignment with sales and marketing. And now things have changed, and especially in the SaaS world, but in many other industries. And I'm going to spend a couple of minutes on this big change, because I thought something to understand. We make a lot more decisions than we used to. My personal belief, and I don't know if, so my personal belief is BANT is dead. So budget authority.
Me too.
Okay, very good. That's the reason budget authority stage is because nowadays there are many solutions. And especially in the SaaS world, for example, here I just approved, I spend my time approving purchases of SaaS offering. I just bought one for posting testimonials on our website. I never imagined I needed a solution to post testimonials on my website. Right? This is just, and I would have never last year budgeted.
Right, right,
But the budget is, I don't know, it's like $200 a month. So it's a no issue. If it helps us, of course, I'm going to do it. So I'm making a lot more decisions on the things that are useful to the business. And the simple criteria is return on investment. It's
right,
not, was it budgeted last year? Was it not budgeted last year? It's return on investment. So I told
right,
my sales team, if somebody is the right profile and doesn't want to buy a solution, you cannot disqualify that process. You can say you've lost and that hit your win rate because it was your job to prove that there's a return on investment that's going to get there. And so you can only disqualify if there's a technical reason why this prospect cannot benefit from a solution. And that's completely changed the game because if you think of it, now this behavior is a lot less relevant than intent because at any time, if you get in a meeting with somebody, you have a good shot at converting that somebody. And it's mostly in SaaS, these things, because it used to be, and I did a few stints as a chief information officer. The procurement was a multi-million-dollar decision. We'd procure Oracle. I remember the guy before me had bought Oracle. He had bought a package of 17 solutions from Oracle, right? It was a 5-year deal, 17 solutions. Nobody did that anymore, right? Now you say, I'm going to take Workday for HR. I'll do it next month, and
right.
big things, right? So you don't do these big deals. So every decisions can be won from the sales standpoint at any time. So you no longer want to do these intent things. And the difference is what needs to happen is a meeting. Somebody needs to be in a meeting. So that's why we call the straight to meeting imperative, right? Don't tell me that they've already done the size 5 times. That just get me a meeting. If you get me a meeting, that's your job of marketing, and sales. Our job is to convert. So that's where the border has moved, right? From the sending a guy with an email address to a meeting, and we
Yes.
call it the straight to meeting imperative. And the irony that it has the potential to realign sales and marketing. Because if you give me a meeting and the profile has been checked, meaning if it has to be on Salesforce, they are on Salesforce, right? So you've checked the very objective qualification criteria. Then from sales standpoint, there's nothing I can complain about. And from a marketing standpoint, it's very clear what I've contributed. I've contributed these meetings that are going to convert to pipeline. So the border is moving between the intersection between sales and marketing, and it's making it much more clear for very fundamental reasons. And
Yes.
you nicely said that that's the cheap Pepper opportunity. We're right there. That's exactly what we do. We help marketers bring meetings to salespeople and qualified help meetings, because we also do reminder things to salespeople. So that's the potential. In our team, we have zero friction between sales and marketing. Zero. The marketers, their job is to bring qualified help meetings. And if they do, everybody's happy. It never happens that we send a student, with an email address
Right.
to
Right.
happen. So it's a fundamental shift. It's a fundamental shift that is impacting very strongly both marketing and sales. So sales have to behave differently, marketing has to behave differently.
By the way, this is where I think there's a spectacular opportunity just for messaging for Chili Piper. Just this whole capability you're bringing to the table. I know lots of CEOs who would love to get tighter integration in between their sales and marketing organizations. But for folks listening, I think you touched on something that's such a key point for me these days, Nicolas, and so critically important. You said it doesn't matter if they budgeted these things in previous years. What matters is what's the return on investment today. And that is just that should be a mantra for anyone listening to this anywhere near technology, because far too often, I think what I'm seeing in the marketplace today is we're very good at understanding technology. We're very good at selling to IT. We're not very good at actually helping our clients build that ROI business case for making our investment, the investment in our offering. And frankly, our clients are so confused in terms of how to do this that you'll remember Brent Adamson and Mac Dixon, who wrote the Challenger sale from 10 years ago. Brent Adamson's still he's with Gardner. And, latest thing that he's publishing in Harvard is called, the new buzzword is sense making in sales. And he's speaking to a new methodology that our buyers are so confused. They don't know how to build business cases to take them up the chain. And as a result of which, the percentage of deals that go to no decision is increasing because they just can't build a positive business case. And the proliferation of informations out there is confusing everybody. And they're not getting value from salespeople. So he said there's this opportunity, and he's coined this term, sense making in sales. So I just love
Uh,
that ROI.
I haven't seen this article, but it makes perfect sense to me. It is the case that salespeople's role is now much more on coaching the champion to do the job to prove the ROI. Because in the old days, it was budgeted. It's a process. You said next year we're going to change our ERP, so now we start the process, and it's nowadays. You get on a call with somebody and they say maybe a software to post review on your website, and I don't need that, but somebody's going to come to me and say, yes, I need it. And explain that to me. At Chili Pepper, we have done a very interesting management innovation. We no longer make decisions in meetings. So
Tell me about that. That's very interesting.
it is interesting. So it's been something we came half by chance. So the old days of making a decision that somebody comes, present a PowerPoint on what the decision should be, the team deliberate, and in the end, the decision is made. Then I discovered that at Amazon, Jeff Bezos had found a problem with that. He thought the PowerPoint was not factual enough. It was, because of the slides, and the better way to present the facts would be to write a memo. So it's a 6-page memo that Jeff Bezos expects his executives to write to present the fact, but it was still the same fundamental
Content.
process. Yeah. So you do a memo, the first 20 minutes of the meeting is for everybody to read the memo, and then the decision process happens with deliberation around the table, right? So we are remote at Chili Pepper. I don't know if you know that, but we have 230 employees in 180 cities and 40 countries. So we are remote. So I said, okay, let's do that. I'm a big fan of Jeff Bezos. For me, his talent as a leader. So 6-page memo, that's how we do the meetings. We start the meeting and then we make a decision. And then we realized that it was helpful if we could post the memo ahead of time, since we all on a Google Doc. So we posted them. And then when we found it, that we were starting commenting on the memo before the meeting.
Okay.
Right. And then we found more and more comments. And by the time we get to the meeting, it felt like every meeting had been discussed. And the big difference is that when people work asynchronously, so they read the memo at the time, the comment they're going to make is a lot more educated than the comment they would have made on the fly, right?
Yes.
You can check, you can think about it, you can edit. You say it's just not what they meant. So all these comments were actually very constructive. And then we found that we no longer needed the meeting, because by the time you look at all the comments, you've got the answer. So we reinvented the decision-making process with these decision memos. And now we've got it in the very formalized place. And every decision we make is a decision memo. The additional benefit to it is that everything is documented. So if we decide to go with a gong instead of a chorus or exec vision for our call intelligence, we know exactly when we made decision, why we made decision, who was in favor, if anybody was not in favor, what the arguments were, and we can document it. And we constantly do that. We constantly go back to past decisions, say, but why do we do that? Say, well, go back to that decision memo and think, what was the solution? So it's completely changed. We no longer have these meetings, and I love it. These decision-making meetings are super painful. People disagree, people get violent. Us, nobody gets violent. It's hard to get violent in the comments, because it's like, so you moron, what are you saying? The wouldn't work. And so that has completely changed. And I bring it up because that's us as buyer, right? So when we buy a solution, we have to make a decision. We do decision memos. So the key role in that process is not the drafter, the person who is drafting the decision memo. And that's a champion. So that the review posting a solution, they found somebody in my team who was willing to write a decision memo because that person was very motivated to get that thing because she thought they would help her job and it
Yes.
was like, and there would be a return on investment. And so she writes it, everybody comments and we decide, and then the purchasing decision is made. So the salesperson on the vendor side, that salesperson job was to help
Write
draft
the
that decision
memo.
memo. So it's exactly what you said. It's about making sense. Like, let me make sense and making sense in a detail thing. So it's like making sense. It's like this is why it makes sense, and the data we have to prove it, and the documenting, not just an explanation. So it's a very and I think that this is decision memo. We're going to publish it soon. I can explain how we do it and the details because look, when we started being remote, it was 2016 when we started the company. Many people tell us, "Oh, it won't scale. You can't do it."
Oh, is that right? It said you
Yeah,
can't scale if you're
can't
remote.
scale. Yeah, you cannot do it. It's fine for a startup for 20 people, but when you have several hundred people, you cannot do it. You'll have to have offices, but it's okay. You'll realize that later. And now here we are, 2022, where Airbnb is going the reverse. And last week they announced that they would no longer have central offices. People can work from wherever they want, and they will
Yeah.
be fully remote. And if you look at the process, exactly the same as us. We get together sometimes, like once or 3 or 4 times a year. We get together. And I think it's the same thing with decision memo. The people realize that the way to make decisions is no longer with this deliberation meeting. It's about documents which are structured and pros and cons. And that's going to in turn impact software procurement because then you meet your salesperson. You say, okay, do you have a decision memo in place? Where do I stand? What have we found? Is everybody understanding what's at stake? And do you have the data to support the decision memo? It's a very different way to sell.
Wow. I mean, one of the things I'm going to steal, Nicholas, I'm going to be quite honest with you, is for our training. We've always struggled with it. Sometimes we say, "Hey, team, you've got to help, build an ROI, and your clients make decisions at the highest level with Excel." They think in those kinds of numbers to get things approved quickly and so on and so forth. I like this idea almost as an exercise for sales teams to have to write the decision memo that their clients are going to use to convince their senior executives to move forward with the deal. And I think that's a magnificent way of coaching salespeople to think about it.
That's brilliant, actually. I hadn't thought of pushing it that far, but you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. If they can write the first draft, it's helpful and it's a good step to make sure the process because you alluded to it, but it's very true that our number one close lost reason at Chili Pepper is no movement. It's not
Yes.
we don't lose to competitors. We lose to no decision, like you said, no decision. So we fail to motivate people enough around the return on investment to take action. And I understand it because everybody's super busy for the reasons I mentioned. There are more and more solutions or more and more decisions to make. So the question is not Chili Pepper versus a competitor. It's Chili Pepper versus these other 3 initiatives that I have. And so that's where exactly what you said, building the decision memo and helping the champion do that process is critical to winning.
One of the things you mentioned earlier, this great fun conversation, by the way, Nicholas, just love this conversation. You mentioned earlier trying to explain the role of that salesperson. And that's what led us down to, sense making. About a month ago, we had Daniel Pink on the show. And, many of the folks out there, Daniel Pink, pretty popular author across a number of topics. His most recent book is called The Power of Regret. But one of my favorite sales books ever is called To Sell is Human. which he wrote maybe 10 years ago, and just spectacular. He's so precise, detail oriented, lots of research, all these other kinds of good things. And at the end of my discussion with him, I said, well, listen, you've been very, very good at sort of identifying what's next. Tell me about what do you think's happening in professional sales right now? What's the next thing in professional sales? And by the way, the reason he wrote To Sell is Human was he saw this gap between the world's perception of what a salesperson was with these age-old, 30-year-old stereotypes and, character assassinations of salespeople and all these things in movies. And then versus what he experienced in the real world, where some of his friends and associates and people in business, the salespeople were some of the most intelligent and intellectually curious and problem-solving people he'd ever met. So he came back without missing a heartbeat and he said, today, sales is management consulting. And he said, if you're going to get somebody to engage in something, all of those old things that we used to do in sales, some of the low value tasks, eventually AI will take over some of those things. But at the end of the day, this idea of solving a significant problem for a client the right way, that's just management consulting. And I thought that was really something for salespeople to kind of catch and glean onto as they move forward with what they do. And I love this idea of, could you write the decision memo for your client to get this deal done?
You're right, because that would typically be a management consulting task to do that. You'd hire a
Right,
management consultant to write the decision memo. You're
right.
absolutely right.
Think of your background
Yeah,
in
that's right.
consulting. The first third of the time you spent on engagements was actually building their business case for a bigger engagement. Right? That's management consulting. You get in with the discovery and then you kind of identify the issues and challenges of the problems and you build their business case to engage you to go in and fix them.
Yeah, exactly right.
And so it really is this management consulting is such an interesting one. How
I
big is
actually
your
have I'll mention one more thing on
please,
that.
please.
I have something that drives all my executives mad. Even though we now 220 people and constantly hiring dozens of people, I still interview every single person. So every single candidate that comes to that
Wow.
stage is interviewed by me. And every single one of them, I have what I call my tech evaluation. And what I do is that I ask them some questions on their understanding around the web technologies and how the web works and how things are possible, not possible. And I do that for that very reason, because I do not want to send somebody in front of my customer or in marketing writing to who does not understand the detail of the technology, because their job exactly says to be a management consultant, and you'd expect a management consultant to understand what they're talking about, right?
Yes.
not to repeat what there is in a newspaper. And so I tell my team, I said, if somebody, and it turns to a large extent, there's a certain talent around understanding technology that some people have more than others. And I want to make
Yes.
sure that those who hire have this talent, because it would be too long to train them. And I check for that. And the fundamental reason is exactly what you said, that the person has to understand the problem of the customers and be able to address it in terms that the customer feel happy about, like, that's helpful, as opposed to you sending me papers from the previous document. So it's and it regularly between 1/3 and 50% of the candidates are rejected based on this test. So they get all the way to me. That's why I say drive them banana, because it comes to me and I said, no, that person doesn't understand tech. We have to start again.
What a great filter, by the way. We have a lot of high growth companies we work with and that are listening to this podcast. I love that filter. Let me ask you another one, Nicholas. Since you meet everyone, when you're hiring someone in sales today, what are some of the attributes outside of that particular one? What other attributes are you looking for in your sales team?
I'll keep it simple. I'll say there are two attributes. One is this tech savviness, and the other one is the ability to do a motivating discovery. So exactly what you said, I expect salespeople to be a management consultant. So the first thing the management consultant does is understand and diagnose the problem, right? You don't go say, if you go to when they have a solution for you, you don't know what the problem is, makes no sense. But yet in sales, people think that it does make sense, that a bit of testimonial posting a site and I can sell it to you. So that's exactly what I'm looking for. I do a role play and looking for the ability to discover. And that's why I call it a motivating discovery, because the whole idea of a discovery is to identify a problem and make sure that the other person on the other side share this identification, that is, state that indeed that is a problem, because then you're motivated to solve it. Say, well, that's perfect, because if you have this problem, I have exactly the solution. So your software may do 10 different things, but in discovery, you're going to find the one thing that is a real problem that people are going to move for, and that's the one thing you're going to talk about and get them to move. So that's the thing I'm looking for in salespeople.
Oh, fantastic. Nicholas, just great. So start to think. I like the idea of again, trying to think through how do the folks listening to this coach their sales team? Can you imagine trying to demo, if all you did was demo technology and you were trying to sell Excel? Most people use about 5% of the functionality of Microsoft Excel. If you've actually ever been through finance and everything, you'd realize Microsoft Excel is a relational database that can do almost anything. It's incredible. Most of us use it as a basic spreadsheet problem because that's the problem we have to solve for. If we tried to start spewing about something like Solver in Microsoft Excel, our buyers would just fall asleep because it's uninteresting to them. If we went into a doctor's office and they prescribed penicillin before I told them that I've actually got something in my eye, that's the problem. He'd be, it's like guessing you can't prescribe without diagnosing first. And so this is one of these things. And frankly, this is, to me, what we're talking about right now is the core issue in professional sales today. This is the problem. And this is why those deals go to no decision, because nobody's building the right decision memo with a client, and the client's spending time, but not getting enough value. And then they just decide, there is no return on investment here.
The
Right.
Excel example is a great one, because you're exactly right. There are so many features in Excel that if you were to go and present the features, people will be bored to their mind. They don't need any of them. But if you ask them, what are you trying here? How do you do all the things you do manually, right? Maybe
Yeah.
the calculation, say, well, it wouldn't be easier if you could just put that with a spreadsheet and automate it. Then you solve the problem. And there are so many problems that Excel can solve that you can't guess which ones are going to be the case before you talk to somebody. It's a great example. Yeah.
Listen, Nicholas, I'd love to keep talking to you for hours, but I know you have other things to get to. I am sure a lot of folks are going to be really excited by this discussion also, and by the capabilities of Chili Piper. So speed to lead. How do people find out more about you and Chili Piper?
Well, first of all, those who are qualified, that is, who I developed the inbound process on the website, should come and try it for themselves. So you've come to chilipiper.com, it's CHILI Piper.com. Then if you submit your information, we'll qualify and route you in real time, and you'll be able to book a time with our reps, because we use our own tool as we do. And we always love to have people come explain their problem to our salespeople. And more recently, we've done a big push on LinkedIn. So I would love for the audience to come and follow us. I mention it because our push is not only to be more present, it's also about publishing this research like the one you've mentioned, right? So we are trying to do research and evaluations that are useful to our personas, and we post that on LinkedIn. So if you become a follower, you may have access to the next round of research. Recently, we've done research on form conversion. So not only using paper, but what converts better. Should have a lot of fields, few fields, what should be around the form.
Fantastic.
Yeah, right. So we've published that. So if you follow Chili Piper on LinkedIn, then you'll have access to this flow of content that hopefully is going to help company get more productive.
Well, listen, team, you're going to get the links to Chili Piper and the links to the LinkedIn homepage all in the show notes here today. And I would first and foremost like to thank Nicholas so much for joining us today. I can't believe 15 minutes went that quickly. I was so engaged in that conversation. So much great learning across the board. And what a pleasure to meet you, Nicholas. Thank you so much for
Same here.
joining today.
Thank you.
And team, thank you so much for listening. If you got value out of today's podcast, please like and subscribe to the Selling Well podcast. And if there's a way we can improve these podcasts so you actually get more value of them, I actually want to know. We know we're not perfect. You can email me directly, Mark Cox at inthefunnel.com, Mark Cox at inthefunnel.com. I check that email. You let me know the 2 or 3 ways that we can improve this podcast to make it more valuable, and we'll certainly take those to heart. Thanks to everybody today. Good selling.